Good morning, I'm Gretchen Ho. It is Thursday, the 11th of December, bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matters. Get to the stories that matter today. President Bongbong Marcos announces the cancellation of fugitive Zaldi Co's passport. The president has directed the Department of Foreign Affairs and the Philippine National Police to work alongside foreign embassies to track down the former Ako Bicol representative. The Philippine Statistics Authority reports that the country's unemployment rate climbed to 5% in October. This figure translates to approximately 2.54 million Filipinos currently without work. And Filipino athletes continue to secure medals at the 2025 Southeast Asian Games in Thailand. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where I talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first on the agenda. President Bongbong Marcos confirms a major development in the flood control scandal. The government has officially canceled Zaldi Co's passport, tightening efforts to track down the embattled former lawmaker, now tagged as a fugitive. Here is the report.
Ang passport po ni Zaldi Co ay kanselado na.
President Bongbong Marcos has confirmed that the passport of former Ako Bicol Party List Representative Zaldi Co has been officially cancelled. In his public report, the president announced that the Department of Foreign Affairs and the Philippine National Police have been directed to coordinate with foreign embassies to help locate the fugitive lawmaker.
Para tiyakin na hindi maaring magtago itong ating hinahabol na magtago doon sa kanilang bansa at kung sakali man ay siya'y pupunta ron ay i-report sa atin para naman ay maibalik natin siya dito sa Pilipinas.
Co's lawyer, Attorney Rui Rondain, however, says he only received a copy of the Ombudsman's motion to cancel the passport. He doubts that the Sandigan's 5th Division already acted on it, noting they'd still have 5 days to file an opposition. But Foreign Affairs Secretary Maria Teresa Lazaro says the cancellation was finalized exactly at 5 p.m. in accordance with the Sandigan Bayan Resolution and the order of the President.
Alinsunod sa resolusyon na ibinaba ng Sandigan Bayan at sa kautusan ni Pangulong Ferdinand Marcos Jr., kinansela na ang pasaporte ng dating Ako Bicol Party List Representative Elizalde Salcedo Co.
Co is wanted for graft and malversation charges over an allegedly anomalous flood control project in Oriental Mindoro. In a video earlier released by Co, he claimed he left the Philippines in July for a medical checkup. The Interpol has issued a blue notice to monitor his movements. Reports indicate he traveled to the US, Japan, Singapore, Spain, and Portugal. Interior Secretary John Vic Remulla earlier said Co may be hiding in Portugal and the Philippines could seek assistance from the Portuguese government, especially with the reports that Co may also hold a Portuguese passport. The Ombudsman previously assured that Co would be given protection should he return to the Philippines. But Co's camp insists he remain afraid to go home, citing threats to his life and heightened public anger.
President Bongbong Marcos confirmed that contractor Sara Discaya has surrendered to the NBI as she faces graft and malversation charges over a 96.5 million peso flood control project in Davao Occidental. Here is the story.
President Bongbong Marcos confirmed that contractor Sara Discaya is now in NBI custody, even without an arrest warrant yet.
Inaantay ang formal ng paglabas ng kanyang warrant of arrest. Kaya't nakikita po natin maganda naman ng takbo ng proseso at yung ating mga hinihilaang na kasama dito sa ganitong klaseng sindikato ay haharap sa hustisya.
Discaya is facing graft and malversation charges in relation to a 96.5 million pesos flood control project in Davao Occidental. DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon said Discaya and other corrupt officials should spend Christmas in jail.
Buti naman, dapat naman talaga makakulong na siya. Dahan-dahan, natutupad na yung pangako ng Pangulo natin. Na bago magpasko, marami ang makukulong, maraming magpapasko sa kulungan. And isa na dyan, si Sara Discaya. So, sigurado na yan.
Sara's husband Curly is not with her as he remains under Senate custody. Discaya's camp said her surrender was part of their legal strategy, adding that this demonstrates her willingness to face the allegations.
Nakalatag na ho lahat yan, ma'am.
in any eventualities na magkakaroon ng may sumampang kaso at may merong impending issuance of warrant of arrest. Nagkataon lang siguro na nagpa-press release ang ating butihing Pangulo na nagbuo siya ng tracker team. Pero hindi ho namin inuna ng Pangulo.
They vow to exhaust all remedies to have the case dismissed.
Mas maganda na ho yan. Walang gastos ang gobyerno, walang pagod ang gobyerno. Alam namin, base din sa ebidensya, na hindi naman talaga ghost project. Tapos po yung proyekto. Napakalakas talaga ng mga pagbaha at pagbagyo. The project cannot withstand the calamities.
Secretary Dizon emphasized that this is only the beginning and many more will be charged and jailed.
Tuloy-tuloy kami. No, ayoko lang pangunahan ng ICI, pero meron kami ulit na i-recommenda, sabi naman natin, every week.
Meanwhile, Assistant Ombudsman Miko Calavano confirmed that additional cases may be filed this week.
The camp of Atong Ang is questioning the Justice Department's resolution indicting the businessman over the missing Sabongeros case. On One Balita Pilipinas, Ang's lawyer, attorney Gabi Villarreal, said the resolution is defective and unfair. The DOJ on Tuesday recommended 10 counts of kidnapping with homicide and 16 counts of kidnapping with serious illegal detention against Ang and 21 of his co-accused, all non-bailable. The cases will be filed in 3 regional courts in Batangas and Laguna. The Justice Department said based on the evidence gathered, there is a huge chance of conviction. But according to Ang's lawyer, these pieces of evidence were only based on self-proclaimed whistleblower Julie Patidongan's testimony and did not consider information from respondents.
Marami hong inconsistencies dun sa mga affidavit ng mga magkakapatid na Patidongan. Yun po ay pinoint out namin sa mga affidavit na final namin sa DOJ. Hindi ko nakitang kinonsidera yun dun sa resolution na natanggap namin kagabi. Kaya ko sinasabi na yung resolution is deeply flawed and rather unfair because in the beginning po kasi talagang ang nakikita namin pinupuntiryan nila rito ay si Mr. Ang.
Several lawmakers are raising questions over Davao City Representative Paulo Duterte's request for a travel clearance covering December 15 this year to February 20, 2026. Duterte is seeking approval to visit 17 destinations. That's including Hong Kong, China, Malaysia, Indonesia, South Korea, Japan, Vietnam, Cambodia, United States, Australia, United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Germany, France, Belgium, Italy, and Singapore. He did not disclose the purpose of his months-long travel, stating only that he would use personal funds for the trips. Sessions at the House of Representatives are set to resume last week of January 2026.
Ano ba siya, kinatawan ng distrito o Miss Universe? Nanawagan tayo sa speaker na wag naman pahintulutan yan. Kasi tingin rin ng publiko, abuso ito no, na pinapasweldohan ang mga elected representatives bilang public servants. Ganun ang paalam di ba? Personal na lakad sa panahong may session.
I think he has to be able to provide a little bit more justification on those particular dates. Very important po na he should be able to make himself available pagka nagkaroon na po ng proceedings on syempre Davao City infrastructure projects.
And don't go away, Morning Matters will be back after a quick break. Keep it here on One News. Good morning, I'm Gretchen Ho. Here on Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and give you the context behind the headlines. The country's unemployment rate climbed to 5% in October. That's according to the PSA. This translates to about 2.54 million Filipinos without work. The figure is higher than the September's 3.8% unemployment rate. Meanwhile, DOLE reaffirms its commitment to advancing initiatives that strengthen the country's labor market and create better employment opportunities for Filipinos. The Asian Development Bank has revised down its growth outlook for the Philippines. It now expects the Philippine economy to expand 5.6 in 2025 and 5.8% in 2026, citing weaker demand, domestic demand, and global trade uncertainty. The downgrade comes as higher U.S. tariffs and slowing exports weigh on economies across Asia. The ADB also cut its forecast for Southeast Asia. The bank noted the Philippines' slower 5.4% growth in the first quarter, with imports outpacing exports and widening the trade deficit to $3.29 billion in May. Joining us today to help us dissect these numbers, we have Professor Emmanuel Leico, Chief Economist of Credit Rating and Investor Services Philippines and Senior Fellow at the Center for People Empowerment in Governance. Magandang umaga. Welcome back to Morning Matters.
Thank you for having me back. Magandang umaga, Gretchen.
Several figures here, no? Let's begin with the unemployment rate. It was 5% in October from 3.8% in September. That means 2.54 million Filipinos are jobless as we head on to Christmas. What do you think could be contributors to that unemployment rate? Is that a temporary dip amid the flood control probe? Is it something that we should worry about given global trends? What are you seeing here?
I hope it's just a temporary dip. However, it looks like based on recent observations and recent forecasts from different sources, the Philippines is now being left behind. While ADB projected or upgraded its projections for the rest of our neighbors, Philippines was left behind. So I think this is something that should be taken very seriously by our economic managers in particular and by the whole Philippine government in general.
You're probably referring to the report that was released, I think yesterday, na hindi po sinama yung Pilipinas dun sa parang Asian report, ano? But what does that mean? How serious is that for us to be left behind by the ADB?
Very serious, because ADB, when ADB makes a statement, the whole world, global investors, global watchers are listening. Remember, during the time of the tariff declarations of U.S. President Trump, ADB also issued an outlook that did not look very good. And now they're saying that it looks like we are now seeing certain trade policy trends from the U.S. and therefore uncertainties during the initial months of Trump are now being clarified. So that's okay. But in the Philippines, everybody among our neighbors were upgraded, but the Philippines was left behind. That is serious. So with our GDP dipping 4% last month, that is way below the projected GDP that the government already issued. And in fact, the projections for this year was already a downgraded projection. Remember, we were expecting that after the pandemic, we will look at least 7% GDP growth rate. But now the government said, no, we'll only expect about 5.5, 6%, and now dipping to 5%. That's a big loss.
You're referring to the ADB upgrades on Asia and Pacific's growth outlook. Us being left behind from this report, does that mean that we have diverging numbers? Parang kumaga naiiba, kaya di tayo sinama dito, iba yung trends na nakikita sa Pilipinas. And do you attribute that to the flood control scandal and everything that's been unfolding lately?
Yes, it's quite obvious. The rest of our neighbors got an upgrade, an upgraded outlook, except for the Philippines. And the only major thing that's happening in the Philippines is the flood control controversy. And talking about billions, even trillions in losses Unless the government is able to put this to rest decisively, conclusively, and with certain benefits to the Filipino people, I don't think this will go away. So it will continue. It will continue to haunt the Philippines, both the consumers and investors. Remember, it looks like when the GDP is declining, even investors are holding back. In terms of their annual projections, their spending, their capital expenditures, we will see a dip next year. And last month, when we looked at the consumer spending, they also declined. So what does that mean? Everybody is sandbagging. Everybody is anticipating that the wars will come before it gets better.
Do you think that lowering interest rates could somehow boost consumer spending, trigger the economy?
Well, it could stimulate in a way. However, we also have to take a look at what the U.S. is doing with its interest rate. They're also expected to bring down their interest rate. So once the interest rate in the U.S. goes down and the Philippines go down, it's going to be a matter of choice for investors. Where do you invest? In a dollar asset or a Philippine asset? Remember, the peso is also declining in value. We're yesterday we hit 59. Once the Philippine peso to dollar exchange rate hits 60, that is going to be very, very, very troublesome for the Philippine economy.
And what do you think's been causing the weakening of the peso? Is it also linked to this flood control scandal?
Yes, it looks like everything now is linked to the Philippine corruption scandal. Confidence of investors in the Philippines has weakened tremendously. So in the past few months, the Philippine peso has become a target, and also when the Philippine debt starts hitting us, well, it actually had already hit us. Remember, the threshold used to be like 60% of the GDP was the threshold for Philippine debt. Now, they increased it to more than 60%. We are now at about 62, 63%. We cannot just declare that the threshold has been increased and people will not react. People are reacting. Can the Philippine economy really handle that kind of debt, that much debt? That's a heavy burden on the Philippines. Remember, the debt service almost hit 2 trillion. We have a budget of about 6 trillion to increase to about 6.7 trillion. When 2 trillion goes to debt service, that's a big loss to the Philippine economy at this time. The debt service is paying for financing that we used to fund projects from before. It is not financing development today and the next few years. So that is going to be a big headache for our Philippine economic managers.
And yet we are getting more loans. ADB has said they will release $400 million policy-based loans to support government reforms to improve ease of doing business. That's added to the 17.56 trillion debt that we already have. Is this a positive development, knowing mas mababa pong interest na binibigay sa atin, and possibly it could address ito pong mga investor-related concerns on red tape?
ADB is a lending institution. The role of the development bank is to finance future development for the country. It's not bad to borrow. Let me be very, very clear about that. As long as the borrowing goes to productive uses. However, in the Philippines, with trillions of money being reported stolen. That is a big loss. That is a leakage in the Philippine economy. So it is like, you borrow 400 million, and then in the midst of this investigation, this sounds like putting good money after bad. So that's terrible. That has to stop. I think before we inject more money into projects being implemented by the government, I think we really have to straighten out what's going on. We need to address this. We need to put people responsible for the losses in the Philippine coffers to be prosecuted, to be judged accordingly, and restore the funds that were stolen from the Philippine coffers.
In short, a robust judicial system would do the trick and not more loans. Tama po ba ang pagkakabasa ko? Because why put more money behind anti-red tape measures when isn't it the problem on implementation? Pero nakasulat po dito that they will be focusing on providing online investors guidebooks and the digital database of business regulations that could improve investor experience. Do you think, and how much could that help? In some ways, medyo magkakaroon ng clarity, but gaano kaya ka-impactful? At ano po ang reforms na nakikita nyo dapat pagtuunan ng pansin?
Okay. Gretchen, we already have the ARTA. We have the anti-red tape law.
Authority.
We even have an
Yeah,
red tape agency.
Yeah.
We have multiple agencies, institutions that are trying to educate investors. If this is purely for information dissemination, I think this is not going to make a dent in the investment climate. What is going on right now is that red tape translates to corruption. Everybody, from the barangay level to the highest level, gets cut. Whenever somebody makes an investment, you need to have barangay clearance all the way up to the highest agency in the country. So I think it's not just information. It's not just a reform in a very limited way. I think that this is the way of governance. How do we govern? Do we govern by creating more agencies, more rules and regulations, institutions, reports? Everybody, including the BIR, is also being exposed now that even the letters of what is this, the LOA is being used to extort money from a business. That's terrible. I think the climate of corruption is now the major problem in the country unless something happens. And also, I am glad that we are now hearing that the president has listed as a priority the political dynasty bills. However, I've been hearing about people that's going to be a major reform. However, the definition of dynasty might be the culprit. They might say, okay, brothers and sisters maybe not be included, but then cousins and so forth, to what degree? That's going to be another, perhaps, I hope it does not take a decade just to discuss.
A long debate and discussion. Oo.
Exactly. Actually, if the president wants to see reforms happen during his term, he could have certified that as urgent, so that the bills will move faster, swiftly, and get better support from the legislators.
Because for now, it is just a directive from the president to prioritize these bills, which raises questions in itself, no, kung ano nga bang kapangyarihan ng Pangulo to direct the legislative branch, no, if it's not to actually officially certify these bills as urgent to bypass certain processes para mas mapabilis yung pagpapapasa ng mga yan. But you're right, no, it's a whole another debate to talk about political dynasties and how will that law turn out if it does get through Congress, if it will be lukewarm or it will actually make a difference in the way the system goes. And we'll have that discussion later with Attorney Africa. But for this one, I want to go to the actual effects on the ground, no? Kasi we're talking about the macro economics, but I want to go back to the unemployment rate, the 5% unemployment rate. Ano po yung nakikita niyong maaaring mag-impluensya dyan? Because in the United States, no, alam ko malaking problema ho yan na hindi po makakuha ng trabaho ang mga bagong graduates because also of artificial intelligence, because iba na yung hinahanap sa workplace. Companies are streamlining, trimming their workforce. Do you see that happening in the Philippines? O medyo malayo-layo pa tayo doon and this is really just because of the economic slowdown?
It's actually happening now, Gretchen. Many of our new graduates couldn't find jobs or meaningful jobs. Many of them are only able to take menial jobs that pay just the minimum or barely. And the numbers are also declining. So I think we can expect that this year, ang Disyembre natin, ang Pasko natin sa susunod na mga ilang araw ay magiging tuyo. At ito lang ang ating mapapagsaluhan pagdating ng Kapaskuhan.
500 pesos lang.
You know, I was looking at the receipt, yung resibo na kumakalat. It actually happened on December 24, 1993. No, yung resibo. Yung resibo did not reflect value-added tax. And remember, sino ba yung author ng value-added tax, yung expanded value-added tax? No, I think that will remind us of what happened and also give us a clue on what's happening now. Malayong-malayo ang 500 pesos. Nobody, and I challenge the DTI secretary, na mamalengke, siguro sasabayan natin si Secretary. May 500 pesos kami. Ano ang mabibili natin sa 500 pesos para pagsaluhan ng ating mga pamilya?
May pang Noche Buena naman daw. Hindi naman daw tinatanong kung anong lalamanin. Pero kung kaya mag-provide ng Noche Buena, yun naman ang sabi ng gobyerno. But, kidding
wait
aside,
a second,
no?
Alam mo, that is the problem with our government officials, no? Parang ini-insulto pa ang mga mamamayan. You know, dapat mamuno ang ating pamahalaan at magbigay ng tamang direksyon. Ano ba ang ating problema at ano ang dapat nating gawin sa mga susunod na araw natin. Ngayon taon.
And those directives, clear directives, are needed. But in terms of short-term solutions for government, what can they do to arrest this slowdown and hopefully give us at least a steady climb in 2026? We do know it will take time to hold the people accountable, to bring justice to what's already been unfolded. But ano po ang pwedeng gawin ng gobyerno rito to be able to inject and stimulate the economy for the coming months?
You know, it's very difficult to escape the major problem. The level of confidence, yung kumpiyansa ay nawala o humina. Napakahina ngayon. Pero may solusyon naman ang presidente. Sinabi niya, by December 15 ay meron na tayong makikita na makukulong. Ngayon, everybody is watching, everybody is anticipating sino kaya ang makukulong. Kung ang mga makukulong naman ay yung mga maliliit na mga tao sa ahensya, mga contractor, kailangan po may makita tayo na makulong na mastermind ng corruption na ito, no? At siguro yun lang ang magkakapagbigay ng pag-asa. If the president, if the government is able to put to justice a major player in the corruption anomaly, I think the people will start thinking next year siguro mas marami pa. Pero this time, wag naman yung mga maliliit at saka mga contractor lang. Kailangan makakita tayo ng mastermind, yung kanilang pinaka-boss. Sino ba ang nagtuturo, sino ba ang mamando sa mga taong ito para mangurakot sa ating bayan.
Medyo matatagalan pa po yata yan. So magtitiis-tiis na naman po ang sambayan ng Pilipino. Any bright spots that you're seeing? Where can people invest, put their money on while all of this is going on?
Well, definitely. Dahil kahit na 500 lang ang panggastos, people will spend money. So I think in the short term, many of our caterers, food producers, yung mga party planners are going to make money during this period. So palagay ko yan ang pinaka short term for now.
Baka yung mga OFW remittances makatulong din sa strengthening of the peso. Okay, maraming salamat po for joining us today. We hope that wasn't too gloomy of an analysis from Professor Emmanuel Leco, Chief Economist of CRISP and Senior Fellow at Sanpeg. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Stay tuned. Morning Matters will be back after a quick break. We'll talk about political dynasties and definitions right after this quick break. Keep it here in One News. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here in One News. Some House members are reportedly pushing back against live streaming this year's budget BICAM. The Bicameral Conference Committee on the 2026 National Budget is scheduled from December 12 to 14, and Congress initially agreed to make the meetings public following long-standing criticism that key changes to the budget are made behind closed doors. But the reported resistance from the House has revived concerns about transparency. Senator Erwin Tulfo says the budget should be open down to the last centavo, while Senate President Tito Sotto insists he will not allow a closed-door BICAM. Deputy Speaker Janet Garin expressed confidence that the House of Representatives can pass its version of the anti-political dynasty bill within 3 to 4 months. Speaking on One News Storycon, Garin said the chamber must first conduct public consultations on the measure. For now, she said there's an anti-dynasty version getting the most clamor, which prohibits officials and their relatives from running up to the 4th degree of consanguinity. While acknowledging that the bill still needs refinement, Garin stressed that Congress is focused on ensuring that an anti-political dynasty law is in place ahead of the 2028 national elections.
This is the first step, okay? It might not be the perfect anti-dynasty bill, but it's a good start. Sinisimulan na yung numbers eh. Andun yung, we can feel na we have the numbers with that kind of version.
Reform organizations Hiraya Initiatives for Change and Progress, Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan, and Democratic Insights Group have jointly released a draft Political Dynasty Prohibition Act. The bill seeks to implement the 1987 Constitution's mandate to prohibit political dynasties by banning relatives within the 4th civil degree from holding or running for elective office in the same constituency. The group stressed that elections should offer real alternatives, allowing citizens to meaningfully exercise their right to vote. The proposal comes amid growing public demand to break the control of political clans, and as President Bongbong Marcos has urged Congress to prioritize an anti-dynasty bill. And joining us today to help us define political dynasties, we have Attorney Carlo Africa, Executive Director for Hiraya Initiatives for Change and Progress, one of the groups calling for prohibition of political dynasties. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me today.
Okay, what's the difference between the 4th degree of consanguinity and the 4th civil degree? Pareho lang ba yun?
I think it's the same. So, yung 4th degree natin abot siya sa uncles and aunts. It's cousins at 4th degree. At 3rd degree, it's going to be uncles and aunts. At secondary degree, it's going to be our up until grandfathers.
Again, okay, ulitin natin.
First degree, parents and parents natin. Second degree would be our yung mga lolo-lola natin. Third degree will be uncles and aunts, and fourth degree yung mga cousins natin.
Okay.
So every time you go up, you have to, that's 1 degree. Go
Okay,
up or
so
go
you're
down.
proposing up to that level.
Yes.
I'm not sure what the bill of Speaker Boji D holds kung
Yes.
hanggang fourth degree nga ba. Pero I do recall from an explainer last night that the proposal of the House was to do it in clusters. So, pagbabawalan. Kung wari sa national level, mga presidente,
Yes.
senador, pero pwede na pag congressman.
Yes.
Kasi ibang level na yan, no? Municipal or provincial. Pero pwede na rin yan pag nasa provincial level, ibang cluster din
Yes.
yan. At iba rin kapag magkakaibang bayan pa kayo.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that proposal?
So we actually have a sort of a similar draft that we have right now. So you are allowed one national position if you come from a political family and one local position. So whether president, senator, party list, and we're including their House of Representatives, you can have one candidate there. But if meron kayong kamag-anak, anak nyo, for example, wants to run for mayor, you can also have one candidate there, so at the local level. At the local level, if one person runs for governor, yung kamag-anak nyo within the fourth degree will not be able to run for other positions in that locality, within that same province. But if it's another mayorship for another province, at least in our version, we're allowing it. So part of the reason why...
Iba yung provincial, iba pa yung
Yung local. Well, I think we're taking local as a whole. So it's just national and local. At least that's
Dalawa
how
lang.
we're
So
looking at it.
pagka
Yes.
governor na, hindi na pwede tamakbo na mayor.
Yes, yung kamag-anak niya. Yung isang thing na maganda importante makita natin dito, yung role ng House of Representatives. Because they act in terms of a national impact kasi they craft our laws, but they're elected at local level. So our draft specifically assigns them both as a national and local official. So if you run for House of Representatives, no relative can no longer run for Senate,
Kumbaga parang
for
pwedeng
President.
may pambato. Kung ikaw ay nasa isang political clan, may pambato ka sa national, may pambato ka sa local. Pero
Yes.
itong iisa lamang.
Isa lang dapat.
Oo.
Yes.
Okay. Of course, the argument of Congressman Guerin, alam naman niya na parang medyo marami pa itong pwedeng i-improve. Pero this could be a good start. Knowing that Congress is composed of representatives that belong to political clans. And this might be the pragmatic route. Do you share the same view na yung kanilang proposal pwede na simula pa lang yun muna gawin natin, kumbaga maglinis muna tayo sa horizontal dynasties.
So right now, I mean, the fact that it's being identified by the president as a priority bill is a big thing. I think it's a good starting point. I think yung kailangan pag-isipan natin dito as bilang mga taong bayan, we have to make sure that the bill actually solves the problem. So part of what we're looking at, if it's second degree, that might not be enough. Kasi the way we look at it right now, it's a sphere of influence that allows all of these dynasties to potentially control lack of accountability. So nakita natin may correlation between if mas mataas yung number of dynasties in a certain province, you have less likely for accountability there as well. And you have less accountability, more corruption, you have more poverty. So I think we have to be very careful in looking at the provisions because again, 83% of our House of Representatives, political dynasty. I think mga 60% ng party list rin, political dynasty. So we have to be very careful in how they craft the law. I think yun naman yung role namin. The reason why we also have our own draft is so that we can compare what is a draft created by political dynasties by the House of Representatives. Ano yung draft na meron tayo sa civil society as well. And we're looking at the Senate, again, there are two chambers. So very important. It's a good starting point. The fact that we've had these conversations, the fact that they're already talking about it and they have a 3 to 4 month timeline. To my memory, this is the first time I've heard Congress actually take it this far. Seriously. Yeah, exactly. So it's
But
promising.
what else is in your proposal apart from banning up to the fourth degree of consanguinity?
So we're actually also banning simultaneous and consecutive. So hindi once tumakbo yung isang member of a political family, no member can run again after that. So across the bans that we
Siyempre,
have.
pag natapos
ang term
yung
nila.
maximum
Yes, exactly.
number of terms.
But I think yung nawawala right now in all of the drafts we've seen so far, whether it's House, Congress, or even different CSOs, is that we put in a mechanism for nominations, for disqualification. Because yung problema dito, we have to look at it from the viewpoint of COMELEC, yung operationalization of this law. We put in a preference. So for example, what if dalawang kamag-anak mag-file ng COC at the same time? What we're saying is that yung number one preference is whether you're part of a political party or not. The second preference, if pareho kayong part of a political party in good standing, the second preference goes into higher possession.
So in effect, you want to strengthen also the political party system.
Exactly.
But are we ready for that? Knowing the nature of our political parties now, hindi ba baka may marginalized din?
I mean, that's true. I think the problem that we have with the parties is that I think 90% of our parties are actually just political families. So this will potentially just allow them to become a stronger, make political parties a stronger institution. Exactly.
Then you can group together, right?
So that's the theory behind. Kasi ang problema rin sa political dynasties, we cannot just look at them as the solution. So banning political dynasties is just the first step. I think the next step and more important step is actually just preparing more capable people to run for elections. Kasi for the past 35 years, it's really been the same people running elections in the country. And yung problema sa atin, we're not preparing any new types of candidates to run for the elections. Sabi nga namin, when we scan the landscape, no one in the country was actually forming candidates at a national scale. Hindi siya ginagawa ng government natin, COMELEC, DILG, NYC. They do not have programs for candidate formation. CSO, schools, church, faith-based institutions, they have this stigma on politics, so they do not do this sort of training or formation of candidates. It's supposed to be on other jurisdictions all over the world. It's usually political parties, but as mentioned, we have very weak parties.
But of course, if you prohibit a certain number of individuals from running for office, you do have to have options and alternative candidates, but also how do you imagine that political party system to go? In the US, we do know may two major political parties, the Democrats, Republicans, pero dito sa Pilipinas wala tayong ganun.
Exactly.
So papaano mabubuo, what ideologies could possibly shape these parties? Is it going to be sectoral groups? Baka maging katulad na lang din nung party list system nangyari doon. How do you imagine that to go?
I think that's why part of it is we have to look at it as everyone has to be involved in this process. Hindi nga lang kasama dito si government, but even non-government actors should also look into this aspect. Because even in the US, wala naman law actually saying na we only have two parties. It's just nagkataon through competition, through passage of time, two major parties came out of that process. But I think in the Philippines, because we have such weak laws and such a weak legal system when it comes to parties and such a strong stigma against politics, we have less and less people engaging into elections in the Philippines. So I think part of it is there has to be people to step up. And at least what I've seen across the country, we've seen more and more people stepping up, lalo ng mga kabataan. So you have more younger people stepping up to run for elections. And part of it is, maybe there's a conversation that can be said, if you come together, you can compete for elections. But ano yung problema? Bakit hindi tumatakbo yung tao? Bakit ayaw na bumuo ng party? The problem in all of these things is still dynasties. Because when you have a political dynasty, 20 years na nakaupo sa position nila, they control money, they have the name, they sometimes even use violence. That discourages more and more people to engage into politics. That's why for the past 30 years, pare-pareho lang talaga yung pangalan natin sa balota natin. So our thinking is if you take out dynasties out of the equation, we will have a new generation of public servants emerging. But it's part of the call for our greater society. Kailangan pa rin natin mag-emerge, no? So I think that's also the next step out of ending political dynasties. He cannot stop with the law. The law is just the first part. The next part is getting more and more people to organize, to develop their own political parties. Lalo na yung mga kabataan nga natin, lalo na yung mga marginalized sectors
Same as with your group.
Exactly.
Is it possible to become, under this setup, a political party? What's your group all about?
So yung three groups that we're part of, the Simbahan Likod ng Bahayan, Democratic Insights Group, and Hiraya, we're all NGOs. our goal right now, we've come together to challenge political dynasties, but our role is really creating better political competition. So our role here is creating better spaces that allow alternatives to actually emerge.
And what have you seen in recent years? I have noticed na mas marami na ngayon ng mga nagsasalita ng mga technocrats.
Yes.
May emerging space for that. There's alternative media as well. What movements are you seeing here that could possibly lead to?
So I think one of the bigger ones, especially for young people, is when we look at the 2022 elections. Nakita natin may shift in terms of young people from just being voters. We saw a lot of them becoming campaigners. So whether that's campaigning in social media, or even doing door-to-door campaigning. And we've seen this shift through 2025. And the hope is mag-continue siya going into 2026. But the problem is this is just a small part of the population. I think part of it is there is promise here, but hindi pa natin na-fulfill yung promise. I think yun yung problema natin because the systems that we have are still directed towards harder political participation. I think that mentioned earlier was employment. I think one of the biggest problems that we have is employment in the country. It's harder for you to think about politics if wala kang pambayad wala kang basic, exactly. And I think part of the problem there, for a lot of young people, they're looking for a way for them to actually earn income. Paano sila makatulong sa pamilya nila? So I think we have to also look into that aspect to get more and more people to engage into politics. But I always go back to dynasties because even at the level of our localities, the reason why we have such poor economic situations is because dynasties are able to do predatory business activities. Because wala silang ibang kalaban. They're able to take control of a business. In some areas, sila lang yung only business owners in these areas. And whether they can give out, hindi sila magbibigay ng permit or kukuha rin sila ng
So it goes side by side, political, economic
Exactly.
influence, especially in the provinces and in towns. No?
Exactly.
But of course, ideally, maganda yung mga proposal ninyo.
Yes.
No? But pragmatically, if you were to have several things that would be non-negotiables,
Yes.
sana, na pwedeng mapasa realistically within this Congress, ano yung mga ibabargain mo doon?
I think the first is the fourth degree. I think napaka-importante yung fourth degree because that's the research that we have right now all points to fourth degree as well. I think too important yung bawal yung simultaneous and bawal rin yung consecutive. So that has to be a clear prohibition.
Bawal yung simultaneous saan? Within national
and local.
Oh,
Especially in the local setting because yun nakita na talaga natin na masama talaga yung situation if you have sabay-sabay at a provincial local setting. The third thing that's important is this should also apply moving forward. So the 2028 cannot be a pass. So I've heard certain scenarios where in 2028 hindi mo na mag-apply siya in 2031 elections. I think it has to apply
a sense
in
of
2028.
urgency
Yes.
while there is momentum.
Exactly. And I think yung important part for us is there has to be a mechanism that will allow it to happen. It will be difficult if mangyari yung pagbawal after elections, after voting. It will open a can of worms litigation-wise. So I think the way we're looking at it right now, there has to be a mechanism before
What
the
kind
election
of mechanism
period. I go
would
back
that be?
to we give COMELEC the power to potentially look at COCs and then dito papasok yung preference. So yung preference aspect we're in.
Yun nga, medyo kahit nga sa campaign contributions pa lang,
Yes.
may lusot na eh.
Yes.
Kung sabihin mo na it's of personal nature, yung pag-donate mo, ay kahit contractor ka pa, ay nakakalusot.
Yes.
And then we saw that with Senator Chis Escudero's situation, right?
Yes.
Dito kaya, I can just imagine all the loopholes.
I mean, okay, if I'm gonna be very frank, no, I think the problem that we have ang ganda ng mga batas natin sa Philippines. We have some of the most beautiful laws across the world. I think the problem is the people implementing it. And time again, what we've seen, it's political dynasties implementing our laws. So the reason why we're here, the reason why there's still corruption, there's still so much poverty, it's because it's the same people implementing
And it's
these
COMELEC,
laws.
the credible body to implement that To be that mechanism that you're talking about.
Unfortunately, they are the constitutional body
Okay.
to be able to
Good
do
point
this.
there. Good point there. Okay, maraming salamat sa iyo. We do hope na kahit yung fourth degree lang,
Yes.
mapakinggan o in the same constituency level. Because pwedeng sabihin fourth degree pero clusters.
Yes, yes.
Maraming qualification yan. And this is a debate that will ensue for quite a while. I'm quite sure of that. We'll hear more from you guys. At maraming salamat for lending your voice to us this morning. We have Attorney Carlo Africa, Executive Director for Hiraya Initiatives for Change and Progress. Don't go away. When we come back, the Southeast Asian Games and the Philippines' latest standing right here on Morning Matters. We'll give you an update on that. Keep it here. We'll just take a quick break. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. Filipino athletes continue to secure medals at the 2025 Southeast Asian Games in Thailand. For more updates, we have one sports correspondent, Bel Gregorio, joining us. Magandang umaga sa'yo, Bel.
Hi, Gretchen. Good morning. Happy Thursday to you.
Okay, what's the standing of the Philippines right now? How many medals have we gotten, and what should we expect for today?
Well, not going to lie, Gretchen, it's getting harder and harder by the hour to keep track of how our athletes are doing, but that's a very good problem, and we'll be even busier in the next few days. But as of December 11, 7:56 a.m. here in Thailand, we are an hour later than the Philippines. We officially have secured 13 medals in total. 2 golds. The first was from Kobe Macario for men's taekwondo freestyle Pumse, and our swimmers in the women's 4x100 freestyle. We also have 2 silvers from taekwondo men's recognized Pumse and in men's 200-meter medley, as well as 9 bronze medals from chess, from mountain bike cycling. We have 2 in men and women's hockey 5s, jiu-jitsu, and our men and women's sepak takraw team. So we currently rank 6th in the standings in the medal tally right now. Thailand is on top with 42. With regard to the tally expected to increase today, we do have a couple of sporting events. Yes, we have athletics still that will also be in the medal matches today, as well as jiu-jitsu, extreme water ski, taekwondo, aquatic swimming, gymnastics, judo, mixed martial arts, karate, and our men's basketball 3x3 led by Ange Kwame, John Ray Pasaol, Joseph Eriobu, and Joseph Sandorifa.
Okay, saan tayo aasa na maaari tayong manalo ng ginto dun sa mga sports na nabanggit mo?
Well, we do have a strong chance of gymnastics, of course. We are led by our Olympian Alea Finnegan. We also have our defending champion sa men's, sa ating men's artistic gymnast. Sa basketball 3x3, we also do have a pretty good chance, but if we are being optimistic, I'd say, yeah, we do have a great chance in all of the events that we have today.
Okay, syempre kasama dyan tennis, ano?
Of course,
with
tennis
with
as
Alex
well.
Iyala. Sino na mga dumating? Kasi kahapon, kausap namin si Bea at sabi niya meron pang, for example, si EJ Obiena has not yet arrived, but
Yes.
who has gotten there?
Flying out also today, Gretchen, is our 5-on-5 basketball team. So we have our men and women's 5-on-5 basketball teams flying today. EJ, I'm not so sure as to when he is flying in. He is supposed to, I think the scheduled event for EJ is on December 16. And you mentioned Alex Ayala. She is here already. But when we asked her coach, she said probably around December 13 or 14. So that's also something that you have to watch out for.
I know, tinututukan mo itong men's basketball, no? And we do know that there is a rule by Thailand on the naturalized players. How did that affect the lineup and the chemistry of this team, the men's basketball?
Well, Coach Norman Black did a really good job in forming a team in such a short time. He got players from the PBA. He also got players from the UAAP, and despite them just not just the UAAP but also in other leagues as well, and despite them not having like a lot of practice time, when we talked to them in the last few days, they were very optimistic. We also have players from different leagues from abroad, like 30 Ravenna, who also came in, practiced in Ateneo with the rest of the players. So it's still something that we should look forward to.
But was that enough time? Alam natin na malaking problem yan, no? Tuwing late na nabubuo yung team, last minute na nakakapag-practice, at ito pa, no? Parang hindi ko lang sigurado tungkol dun sa chemistry nung mga nakuhang player, no? But anong nakuha mong insight doon sa pakikipag-usap mo sa kanila?
Well, naging challenge naman talaga yun, Gretchen, lalo na kasi paiba-iba rin yung rules ng Thailand about it. We sent different lineups and then they also had different rule changes. So it was quite confusing, but it was definitely out of our control. So we just had to do with the time given to us. And if there's something that our basketball players have proven in the last few years, it's that whatever you throw at them, they could definitely thrive in any situation. So we'll have to see about the chemistry, but with all their skills put together and of course led by Coach Norman Black, we shouldn't be too worried.
If my memory serves me right, we are the defending champions in the SEA Games basketball, right? And this lineup will feature Ray Parks, 30 Ravenna, Matthew Wright, Robert Bolick, Abu Tratter, Von Pesumal, Jamie Malonzo, and Dolph Panopio. I hope the young guns will be able to bring home the bacon, and please bring home the bacon for us. There, Belle, maraming salamat for that quick update on the 33rd Southeast Asian Games now happening in Thailand. We have one sports correspondent, Belle Gregorio. MQuest Ventures has dropped fresh behind-the-scenes photos from MMFF entry Manila's Finest. The movie stars Ultimate Heartthrobs Piolo Pascual and Enrique Hill, and MQuest stars Dylan Menor and Cedric Juan. Also in the photos is singer, songwriter, and producer Rico Blanco. Manila's Finest is MQuest's 2025 Metro Manila Film Festival entry, produced in partnership with Spring Films and Signal. Set in the shadows of early 1970s Manila, the movie follows Lieutenant Homer Magtibay, played by Piolo, as he and his team hunt down a series of killings unfolding in the city's slums. It is a crime thriller directed by Raymond Red. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you the right start to your Thursday morning. Let's go ahead and make the day matter. My name is Gretchen Ho. Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time.